American gentleman that talking about love and really what we're looking for, love, make you feel that really there is some hope in this world that things will go better. Now I invite another dear friend of mine, Mr. Jordan, to come here and brief us overall about Mr. Muhammad Higazi's situation and
constitutional law, freedom of speech, religious freedom issues, as well as a full government affairs team here in Washington, D.C. In the early 90s, as we had much success at the United States Supreme Court, defending the rights of Christians and those who were trying to completely remove religion from the classroom here in the United States and the founding of our country, we were approached by Europeans in France and in Russia about opening up similar operations inside Europe. So we began the European Center for Law and Justice. It's headquartered in Strasbourg, France, where the home of the Council of Europe and the European Court of Human Rights. That office oversees all of our efforts at the ECHR, but also our efforts throughout the world, in the sense that the Higazi matter, Gregor from our office that you mentioned is in Strasbourg and runs our office in France. That office, the ACLJ, European Center for Law and Justice, is an NGO at the United Nations with full consultative status with ECOSOC. So we're able not only to have the influence here in Congress, in Washington, D.C., and in the courts of the United States, or not just in the European Court of Human Rights, but also at the United Nations itself. We later expanded, though. We continued on working in places. We now have a full operation in Moscow, Russia. One of our most famous cases there involved the banning of the Salvation Army by Russia because, as the government argued, there could only be one standing army in Russia, and that was the Russian military. We took that all the way to the European Court of Human Rights, and our staff there has been working for a number of years on very similar matters. These countries like Russia continue to fight, and they will fight and use the bureaucratic and the legal mechanisms so that these cases take years. The European Court of Human Rights backlog is 6 to 10 years. So while we may look at these cases and say, you've got to be kidding me sometimes, these countries can put the issue off just by going along with the procedure because of so many cases. To give you an example of how our work has expanded recently, though, it's much more than just Western and Eastern Europe. And though the ACLJ, and with our consultative status at the UN, has really taken a lead, challenging head-on through our daily radio broadcast here in the United States, where we're on over 1,000 stations live, our television broadcast as well. Those of us from the ACLJ do a lot of media here in the United States, and I was on Al Jazeera Friday talking about the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed trial here. So we are out there about these issues. We've confronted head-on the Organization of the Islamic Conference and the Defamation of Religion Resolution. We've spoken about it openly. They know about us. They know about our work, and we're not afraid about what we're doing. To give you an example, we have an office in Jerusalem, Israel. And so many times, being a conservative group, people will say, well, so you're just another pro-Israel group. And though we do support Israel, our first case, the first situation we handled, was for a Christian Palestinian from Gaza whose husband was killed. And because of our relationship with Israel, we were able to get her out of Gaza the day before Cast started. Her husband was killed in the street by Hamas or Islamic Jihad. After he ran the Christian bookstore in Gaza, the Palestinian Bible Society, which provided a ton of resources to the Muslim community in Gaza. And the Christian community was only a few hundred people. Food, the internet. It was a popular community location. It was bombed a couple of times at night, no one killed. And then one day he was kidnapped. In this family, she was pregnant with her third child at the time, was dragged into the street the next day and killed. No recourse, no justice. But because of our relationships there, we were able to have her and her family get them out of Gaza right before the war started. Of course, so these issues of Christian persecution and persecution of religious minorities in general are very dear to our heart, not just for political reasons, not just because we agree with the ideology of a government or of a person, but because of how deeply we feel faith and how important that is in people's life. But so we've got the office in Jerusalem, Israel. But we also have an office in Lahore, Pakistan. And something very different about the ACLJ and about all of our international affiliates is that we are not coming with a U.S. foreign policy agenda for the world. We believe in freedom. We believe in democratic principles and human rights. But we kind of boil it down to 4 main points. If you have religious freedom, if you have the freedom to associate, and you have the freedom to speak, you'll have good government. And those may sound simple to those of us from the United States, but those are very tough to achieve goals. But we're trying, and we're doing everything we can, which is why we have a staff in Pakistan that's willing to risk their lives representing Christian minorities in criminal proceedings, much like the situation in Egypt, not because they're on the street trying to promote their faith, just because they are Christian and they face life imprisonment at very young ages. But we've also expanded even further than that. And I will let Shahryar Gill from our office here in the United States, but who oversees our office in Pakistan, discuss specifically the matters there and the Higazi matter that we've been working on through our office at the ACLJ. But we've expanded much greater. We've gathered a lot of constitutional knowledge over the years, being an organization that is focused primarily just on constitutional law in the United States. When we were founded, our chief counsel has argued over 17 cases at the U.S. Supreme Court on issues as far-ranging from free speech to protest and civil disobedience to campaign finance reform. So we know the Constitution well. And recently, while we were actually in the West Bank, in Bethlehem, we were approached by an organization that said, it's about 1.5 years ago, that said, we'd like you to come to Zimbabwe. It's a widows and orphans group. They said, we have all these great contacts there, but we can't really do anything with them. They're trying to rewrite a constitution. Now, Zimbabwe is a tough place politically. It's a tough place for attorneys. It's a tough place for any of those involved in the political process, regardless of what side you're on. But we went. And we opened a full-time office in Harare, Zimbabwe, called the African Center for Law and Justice, where we focus and we are working with the Minister of Constitution and Parliamentary Affairs, who came to our official launch in Harare. This is a minister of the government, and launched our organization publicly, standing with us and allowing us to help draft the language for religious freedom and for the rights to assemble. These are important places that are long-term strategies. Things will not change overnight in Zimbabwe. We've also opened an office just most recently in Nairobi, Kenya, the East Africa Center for Law and Justice, again, because Kenya is redrafting their constitution. So as an organization, though, we also started very young in the 1990s because of the work we've done here, because of the access to media that we have, and because we're a trusted source for many around the world. We're able not only to impact and export some of the knowledge we have about constitutions and rights and freedoms, not just in the United States anymore, but to those who are persecuted, whether they are persecuted by government agents, non-government agents and non-government actors, whether they face civil penalties or the death penalty. We are there to stand at the United Nations, at the U.S. Supreme Court, at the European Court of Human Rights, and at the International Criminal Court as well, to do everything we can to protect those whose only charge is their faith. And we understand that very deeply. I'm going to invite now Shahryar Gill from our office here at the ACLJ, but who oversees our office in Pakistan. Shahryar was born, raised, and is Pakistani. He went to law school in South Korea and then got his LLM here in the United States. Shahryar is going to talk specifically about the case out of Egypt, as well as some of the other cases we've talked about in Pakistan.